Good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining me this morning, whether you're watching live or you're watching the recording. I just appreciate the fact that you're watching. Thank you once again for joining me this morning as we talk about, we're continuing our discussion on building your social media community and working with that. And what I would like to talk about this morning is how, we can kind of better know ourselves and how better knowing ourselves can help us build a community in social media or just, communities in general, right? Like this is sort of building off what we discussed last week when we talked about the idea of community, segmenting our community, allowing different parts of the community to utilize their strengths to help build the overall community. And so last week we talked a lot about the other people's responsibilities and roles in terms of how we can build our community. And this week we're going to get introspective and look into ourselves to see how, kind of understanding ourselves can help us build our social media communities. And we're going to do that through, one, creating a SWOT analysis, SWOT, strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. And then using that SWOT analysis to build SMART goals. So as we're getting started talking about a SWOT analysis, the first thing that we want to ask ourselves is, well, just what exactly is a SWOT analysis? Right? And the idea behind a SWOT analysis is pretty simple, right? For every campaign, for every project, a marketer in any sense is going to analyze their strategies based on 4 specific quadrants. And these are strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. And strengths and weaknesses, these are internal factors. These are things that we can control, areas where, we know that we are good, or places where we know we need improvement. And then opportunities and threats, these are external factors. These are things that are sort of outside of our control, that are available to us or happening to us that we need to be aware of as we're approaching the situation so we can better navigate around them. So we're going to focus on a professional, social media-based sort of SWOT analysis today. But this is also something that we can use for personal reasons. And if you've had me in other courses before, you know that I talk about SWOT analysis in several different courses because really just sort of the idea of examining things in a SWOT analysis sort of way makes a lot of sense when it comes to how we make decisions, right? Just making decisions in general and setting goals. So I talk about it from different perspectives, from business perspectives, from design perspectives, from personal perspectives as we're, for example, approaching the job world. And so in this instance, we're taking a slightly different look at the SWOT analysis in terms of talking about it specifically from the point of view of social media marketing, social media communities, that sort of thing. All right, so let's look a little deeper at our SWOT factors, our strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. And so for our strengths, we're asking ourselves basically, what do we do well? What are we good at? Right? So when I'm thinking about building strengths, I'm thinking about, just kind of sitting down and creating a list of what I'm good at. Or what is my brand good at? With where we're standing right now, what are we doing well? What advantages or strengths do we have that kind of sets us apart from everybody else, right? And the example that we have here is we have a definitive brand voice and active community. And so having an active community in and of itself can be a strength. But I think the bigger thing here that is, going to be a strength that's going to be an attraction to that active community is that, you have a definitive brand voice. So if you have a definitive voice, which is what we're talking about, right? When we're talking about creating a brand, that was the whole discussion we had a few weeks ago when we talked about brand factors is sort of creating this unified voice across different platforms so that regardless of where we're going, the community that we're trying to build gets the message and we're able to work from there. So just what are we doing well? What are things that, we're achieving that is good? Weaknesses are where we might be lacking, where we might have things that aren't as good as they should be, or things that need improvement. And again, these are internal factors, right? Strengths and weaknesses are internal factors. These are things that we can control. So when we're thinking about weaknesses, we're thinking about how we might be holding ourselves back, or how some things that we might be doing that might need improvement is holding us back from reaching our goal. A big one here is obviously going to be marketing budgets. Right? Budgets are big internal factors that have an impact. And, to some degree, like we can control how we budget, right? Like that's the big thing in terms of being an internal factor. We can control how we budget. We might not be able to entirely control how much money we have in that budget, but we can control how we prioritize where the money goes in a budget, right? Or where our resources go, or where our time goes. Usually a weakness might have something to do with some sort of finite resource that we need to figure out a way to either budget better or just work it into what we're doing. But these are factors that we can control, that, we can work with, we can maybe make strides to correct, that are holding us back from what we want, what our goals are. And so the first of our external factors is opportunities. And so this is kind of what we have out there that we want to gain from what we're doing. Right? So maybe we think there's an untapped market out there. Right? There's an opportunity to reach a whole new segment of the population with what we're doing. Because for whatever reason, right, we're just, we have that sort of voice, but we're not reaching that segment right now. Or maybe we can increase brand awareness to start a wider funnel so we can attract more people into our social media. Or maybe there are new social media platforms that are opening up that might allow us to reach different individuals, right? There's all sorts of things that could be encompassed in an opportunity that is an external factor that we can take advantage of, or we can work with, or we can try to figure out, that's going to help improve what we're doing. And then finally, threats. These are outside forces that can hinder your efforts. These are competitors. These are, things like the condition of the economy, right? Like if the economy is not doing so great, people are not going to want to spend as much on recreation, all right? Or they might not have as much time to devote to entertainment. Are there a lot of other people in the space that are, working to steal market share away from us, right? These are the competitors that we're talking about here. As I was looking at your proposals several weeks ago, right, like everybody had pretty good ideas, right? But these were all ideas that had other people out there that were doing similar or the same things, right? And that's completely understandable. Because, nothing has to be unique, right? Like the general idea of a channel or a business in general, right, can be the same or similar to others, right? There's Walmart and there's Target and there's, all sorts of big box department stores. Doesn't mean don't start a department store. It just means figure out where yours fits. Figure out what makes you different, what sets you apart, right? So even though there might be a lot of gaming accounts out in the social space, the goal then becomes, well, figure out what sets you apart, what sets your channel or your social media or your business apart from everybody else that's in that same space. But we have to recognize that these outside factors exist that could be a threat to what we're doing, right? Because if we just kind of go into it sort of blissfully unaware that this potential is out there, then we're going to end up with potentially situations where we're going to be losing out because we don't know who else is out there doing what we're doing. So understanding your threats, it also gives you a good opportunity to do market research. You know, like if you think that people aren't watching their competitors or aren't looking at what their competitors are doing, you'd be naive, right? When I think about YouTube in general, one of the big things that, you know, is discussed and is talked about is, you know, look and see what other successful people in your space are doing to gain that market share. Is it a particular posting time, right? That was something that we discussed a couple of weeks ago when we talked about best practices. And one of the things that kept coming up is finding a time to post that meets your audience. So is it a posting time, right? Are they posting at different times than you are? And that's maybe that's a factor that's allowing them to get a bigger share. Maybe it's the voice in which they portray the content, right? Maybe your voice isn't quite as bolsterous, as upbeat as the community is expecting. Maybe you're out of trend with what the larger community is expecting. And, you know, there is a place for niches, right? There is a place for niche markets for people to kind of carve out their own path and that might have a smaller following, but still valid. But at the end of the day, if we're looking to be successful, then, you know, we want to make pushes in the direction that is, you know, generating success. Right? So looking at these threats and examining them from the outside is a big deal. And I am brought to, you know, this brings to mind something that I saw very recently, and I might just do an entire live class one Friday on this particular case study just because it's so recent and so like massive to social media marketing and community building in general, right? Might be a good one to do maybe next week, come to think of it. Like I was just reading about this earlier in the week about a TikTok account for a small auto dealer. Just, I believe they're in Florida, just out in kind of the middle of nowhere, Florida, just a small auto dealer, where the person that was running that account started making TikToks for this business that you wouldn't necessarily think would do well on TikTok, but they started making TikToks that, you know, sort of followed the rest of TikTok and what TikTok's doing. Right? Like one of the first ones that blew up was just like a photo of the car dealership, or it wasn't a dealership actually. I think it was a repair shop. Of the repair shop. And it was just kind of a photo or a video of the outside of the repair shop. And, you know, they'd kind of memeified it a little bit by putting a filter on it, and they had put text on the video that said, "Oh no, everybody blow this up. I lied on my resume and now I'm afraid I'm going to get fired." right? And so, it was a TikTok itself that kind of appealed to, the TikTok generation, all of our Zoomers. And it gained a lot of traction and it sort of blew up and it blew the channel up. And so now millions of people from really across the world, but definitely across the country, know about this small auto shop in rural Florida because of because of the social media manager kind of taking advantage of opportunities, examining threats, looking at their strengths, looking at their weaknesses, looking at all these SWOT factors. And so I think it's a good idea probably to take some time. Sounds like a good idea for next Friday for us to take some time and just do an in-depth look at this case study just so we can understand it a little bit better. But why would we want to do this? I think that kind of gives you a little bit of input as to why we would want to do a SWOT analysis. One is that it's going to give us smarter goals. It's going to allow us to dig into data and make better decisions based on data. And then it also applies to other areas of kind of what we're doing, right? So when we're talking about setting goals, we are talking about setting SMART goals. And so if we create a SWOT analysis, that's going to give us a framework in order to allow us to create SMART goals, SMART goals. We're talking about a specific type of goal setting here, which isn't just like, when I'm saying SMART goals here, I don't just mean like, those are some SMART goals. I mean like SMART is a specific type of goal. It's an acronym, right? So we want to create SMART goals in a manner that's realistic, that's going to give us everything we need to know to set a good goal for our social media, for our company, for ourselves, whatever we're doing, right? So you can better understand the places where you might struggle, and you can avoid putting yourself in a situation where you can't meet your goals if you understand your SWOT analysis, right? Because if you're building SMART goals, and your SMART goals kind of run in contrast to your weaknesses and your threats, and you're not paying attention to your opportunities and your strengths, then this is just going to start kind of a downward spiral, right? Because you're not going to meet your goals. So we want to do this SMART analysis so we're paying attention to our goal setting and we're able to set goals properly. So what is a SMART goal? I said we're talking about a specific type of goal here when we're talking about SMART goals. These are SMART, SMART goals, which is an acronym that stands for specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and time-oriented. So when we say specific, when we're creating a specific goal, we want to make sure you know why you want to achieve your goal. So I'm going to set this goal and I want to know the point of it. Not just the goal itself, right? I want to know the point of why I'm setting this goal. Because I could say oh, I want to get 100,000 subscribers on YouTube. But why do I want to get 100,000 subscribers on YouTube? What is the purpose for me getting 100,000 subscribers on YouTube? If I want to do it just to do it, I mean, I guess that is to some degree a purpose, but it would be better off if we knew that, oh, I want to get to 100,000 because growth in social media is logarithmic, right? So the more I get to, the more I'm able to grow over time. And so since 100,000 is the first commemorated milestone by YouTube, that's a good goal to start in terms of having a measurable, right, which is our next one, and the outcome of your goal should be measurable. It's a good place to start for having a measurable, specific outcome that can get us toward that logarithmic growth. Right? So you're not just saying, I want to get more subscribers on YouTube. You're saying, I want to get a number, a specific number of subscribers on YouTube that is measurable. It's like running a race and having a finish line, right? Although that finish line's kind of fake, right? Because, once you reach that finish line, we don't stop, we just move the finish line. So in the example that we're kind of giving here, where we're saying, I want to get 100,000 subscribers on YouTube, the measurable goal there is 100,000. We know how many subscribers we have. We know how far away 100,000 is. And so we know the gap we have to bridge. Attainable. Challenge yourself, but your goal should not be impossible to reach. And so one of the things that I like to say at this point, right, is, we're always going to be resetting goals. So start with a simple goal, right? If I build a new channel and my goal is to get to 100,000 subscribers off rip, day dot, right? That's going to be unattainable. I'm not going to get there in any sort of satisfactory fashion that's going to allow me to feel like, oh yeah, I'm achieving this. I'm making things happen. It's just going to be demoralizing, right? Because again, subscribers, followers, all that stuff is logarithmic. So the more you get, the more you can get. So start out with like, hey, I want to get 10 subscribers. I want to get 10 subscribers on my YouTube channel. What can I do to get 10 subscribers? Then, once you reach that milestone, what can I do to get 50 subscribers? Reach that milestone, what can I do to get 100? What can I do to get 1,000? What can I do to get 5,000? What can I do to get 10,000? Then what can I do to get 100,000? Or 50,000 and then 100,000. However you see it as attainable in your mind. And then you're moving up in that same logarithmic fashion as subscriptions and follows happen. You're moving up in that same fashion with your goals, right? Because 10 to 50, that's 40 subscriptions. 50 to 100, that's 50 subscriptions. 100 to 500, that's 400 subscriptions. 500 to 1,000, that's 500 subscriptions. 1,000 to 5,000, that's 4,000 subscriptions, right? So you're moving the goalposts. You're doing that. You're following that logarithmic curve, and you're setting attainable goals for yourself. So they are specific, right? You know that you want to get to this number of followers because that's going to increase awareness, which could increase buy-in, things of that nature. So your goals should also be relevant. They should be related to your results. Right? We want our goals to be related to our outcomes. So for example, if the only reason you want 100,000 subscribers is to get the 100,000 plaque, and it doesn't really have anything to do with any of your business outcomes or anything like that, then not really relevant. Your goals should be related to your results. And it should be time-oriented. You should have an end in sight. Right? Regardless of what that means, you should have an end in sight. You say, I'm going to get 10 subscribers this year. Right? Now, remember, you want to make it attainable, right? This adds to the measurability of our goal because not only have we set sort of a number here that we can kind of give out and say, this is where I want to go, but we have this timetable that says this is where I want to go by this day or this time or whenever. So we want to keep it attainable, right? We don't want to say, oh, I want to get 100,000 subscribers in a week. Probably not attainable. Not unless, maybe not unless you already have 95,000 subscribers, right? I want to get to 100,000 subscribers in a year, in 3 years, in 5 years, right? Then we have time-oriented goals that are attainable. And one of the things that I like to kind of bring up whenever I'm talking about this is I like to talk about Mr. Beast. I like to talk about our old friend Jimmy Donaldson there from out in the eastern part of the state over there. If you'll look on Mr. Beast's channel, Mr. Beast made some videos to himself where he talks about SMART goals that he set on a timetable. He sat down one day, recorded a bunch of videos where he had set SMART goals for himself, and he said, hey, me in the future, kind of holding himself accountable to these SMART goals that he set for himself, right? Hey, me in the future, do you have, by now you should have maybe 1 million subscribers. Have you achieved that? How are you doing? And of course, now with the way that his growth has been, especially over the last couple of years, right? When these videos come out, they're like, oh, like you should have maybe 3 million subscribers by now. And he's, 50 million, which is, a wild level of growth as far as all that goes. But those videos came as a result of him creating SMART goals for himself, creating goals that are specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and time-oriented. And then, not only that, but holding himself accountable to the SMART goals that he set. Which is, something that we want to do, right? Like, if we just set goals and then hold no accountability for them, then what was the point of setting the goal? Right? If we're not going to, in some fashion, make ourselves accountable or have someone else hold us accountable for a goal that we've set, then really it's like the goal's not set, right? Like we can just kind of do whatever and it doesn't really matter if we attain the goal or not because there's nothing holding us accountable. So we can let ourselves off the hook, as it were. Not saying everybody should record videos to themselves that kind of hold themselves accountable like that come out on a scheduled date and time. That was the way that Mr. Beast did it, and it worked for him. Right? So we want to find ways to hold ourselves accountable that work for us. So when we set these SMART goals, right, this is going to help provide us direction. It's going to give us a place that we want to go, right? It's going to give us a destination. Right? When you go to the airport, you don't buy a plane ticket that just has a question mark on it. You buy a plane ticket with the understanding that you know where you're going. Right? And so that's what SMART goals help us to do. SMART goals, setting a SMART goal is, buying that plane ticket that has a destination on it. There might be some delays. It might take us a little longer to get there than we planned. There might be turbulence along the way. But eventually, we're going to get to that destination. Again, if we hold ourselves accountable. We can also determine the audience that we want to reach and reach out to. Right? We can find those opportunities for segments of the population that match up with what we're interested in, or what we're doing, or what our message is, that we're currently not reaching out to. One of the things that we talked about earlier on is we talked about going to people where they are. So if we look at the opportunities in our SWOT analysis, we're going to learn where they are. And then we can in turn set these SMART goals to go to those places. Whether that is a physical location, like maybe another country where they might be more interested in kind of what you have going on, or just a different social media site, right? Like we might discover through research, through external opportunities, that maybe there's not as much reach as we thought there was on a particular platform, but this other platform over here, this other platform fits more in line with what we want to do. So that's our opportunity. And we can create a SMART goal that pushes us in that direction to get that audience. And it defines the whys of your social media presence, right? We said we want to be specific insofar as we want to have a reason for doing what we're doing. We want a reason to set these goals. And your reason can be simple, right? Your reason doesn't have to be complex. It doesn't have to be overly broad. It doesn't have to be financial. Your reason can be simple. Your reason can just be like, I want to bring happiness. I want to bring a little bit of joy. I want to entertain people like me who are looking for stuff like this. Or maybe I want to, kind of as the old saying goes, be the person you needed when you were a kid or a teen or whatever, right? You can look at those opportunities and you can look at those strengths that you have based on what you've done. And you can create goals that push yourself into the whys, into those specific directions. It also allows us to dig into data. Right? If we're doing a SWOT analysis in an effort to create SMART goals, we actually have to sit down and dig into the data. And in a future live class, we're going to talk about, examining social media data and all that kind of fun stuff. And just, looking at hard numbers and what these hard numbers are telling us. But this is why it's important to do this analysis and look at these numbers while you're doing this analysis. Is that it forces you to reassess. It forces you to get introspective. Because if we don't take a hard look at things, right? If we don't utilize our analytics heavily, if we don't, dig into our data and take a hard look at things, we can just kind of be blissfully ignorant about what's going on. If we're just kind of making things and putting out there that we like to make it, right? Like, if you already have a following, that's great because you can pretty much rest assured in the fact that your following is there for you or for your voice. And if you're just making things that fit into your voice that are things that you want to make, then you're good, right? But if you're just kind of making things that you want to make and they're not really landing, if you're blissfully unaware of the hard data, you just keep on doing that and you keep on kind of staying in the mud, right? And remember, the things that we've talked about in the past is that, a big part of this is the fact that, if you go through a programming and web development program, there is some likelihood that you'll get a job as a webmaster at a local business. And if you get a job as a webmaster at a local business, there is some likelihood that you will be asked to also do the social media because it's internet related and everything just kind of falls into the webmaster's lap in these places. And so in that sort of way, the people that own that business that you're working for might expect results. They might not. Right? They might not care. They might just want somebody who does it. But even still, if they don't really care, you can give them an opportunity to see what you're worth, right? Prove your value by increasing social media traffic and doing all of this stuff, right? Because you can say, hey, I is like, hey, you noticed that like increase in purchases we've seen over the last couple of months. You're welcome. Here's my social media data that shows, you know, where I set this goal, and here are the things that I did to achieve this goal. And we've seen this increase in our social media, and that has directly correlated with people buying more things from our store. And it's like, oh wow, you know, like you did that. You know, you're worth more. You have a value. Here's a raise, right? That's what also applies to other areas, right? Like we can use this data to expand and look at other things. So it's not just about our social media, right? We can use it to talk about merchandise. We can use it to talk about business services. Maybe we can discover that maybe there are areas of a business or a service that we provide that maybe we're not doing, but some of our competitors are, and it can give us some insight that, you know, maybe that's what we need to be doing. Search engine optimization, SEO, right? Like what are the key terms that people are looking for in the market that we're in? Are they on our website? Are they on our social channels? If not, why not? And can we make a plan to get them on there? Right? So this stuff aligns with your social media presence. And it also brings in the overall organizational vision. So everything is in alignment. Right? Top to bottom. You know, if you're a social media manager for a business, you see this alignment from, you know, the overall corporate mission statement to the things that you are doing on social media to bring these things to the forefront. And that's super important. Speaking of data here's some data from sproutsocial.com that just talks about social media marketers' top challenges by role. And we can see, by and large, right, 45% of practitioners report that identifying and understanding the target audience is the biggest challenge that they face. And the second business is developing social strategy to support overall business goals. Those two things sound kind of familiar, right? Those two things kind of sound like what I've been talking about for the past 37 minutes. How we can use a SWOT analysis to inform both of these things. To help us identify and understand our target audience, and to help us develop a social strategy to support our overall business goals. And these are the two biggest challenges faced by social marketers. Interesting. And that last one there being securing a budget and resources. And, you know, that's going to be a lot tougher for us to manage. Because oftentimes, especially if it's not us, if we're in a company as a social media manager, we're not in charge of that. Right? If we're making things happen and we're bringing in sales and things of that nature, right? Like we can use this data and present it to the powers that be and say, you know, we're doing this. We need a bigger budget so we can do this more. Then you can use that data related input to perhaps get a bigger budget. But at the end of the day, right, budget is always at the center of a lot of things. And, you know, it is important to point out here that it's not just budget, but it's also resources. It's time, it's people, it's all sorts of things that kind of work together that are finite resources that, you know, is a challenge. And sometimes we can't control that. For leaders, and we're talking about business leaders here, we can see kind of the incongruous nature here between social media marketing practitioners versus business leaders who have a social media marketing plan. Although 51% of business leaders see that, you know, developing social strategy to support business goals is the biggest challenge, which again, right, last slide. And if we look at this here, right, these two are basically the same, right? They're the same ideas. And of course, that's going to be on the forefront of more business leaders' minds because, overall business goals are more of the pressing issue for them. Right? We can see that, business leaders don't necessarily understand that identifying and understanding a target audience is important. But as a social media marketer, we know, or at least we know now, that these two go hand in hand. So if we can do this, we can get these. In a better manner. 33% is just worried about publishing content, just worried about getting things out there. Getting that brand awareness. And 31% again, budget and resources. Right? That's a concern for everybody. Finally, to wrap up today, we can use the SWOT community to better understand our community. Just by understanding our goals, we're better able to create a unified message, which is a huge deal. If we have this unified message, we're better able to understand who we want to hear that message or who that message is relevant to. And then when we understand all of that, we can tailor our presence to the right audience and get the right people entering the funnel that we want to get. That way we can get more of those people down the funnel to that loyalty level, to that repeat customer level that's going to build business, build our channels, build whatever it is we're trying to build. Right? So the SWOT analysis becomes super important. And so that's all that I have for you for today. I think this is a super important thing. I think it's something that we should consider as we're looking at different things. If you don't do one for your social media, do one for yourself. Right? Do a SWOT analysis for yourself and just kind of get a good understanding of where you're at. I encourage everybody to do that. So with that being said, that's where we'll stop for today. I want to thank you all again for watching, whether live or recorded. If you have any questions, if you're here with me live, you can throw them in the chat. If you're watching the recording and you have a question, please send me an email. Please send me a Teams message. I will answer it to the best of my ability. But once again, thank you for watching. We will see you next time.